I now call upon Bonnie Hammer to deliver the 144th commencement address of Boston University.
Wow. Well, thank you, President Brown. What acts to follow? A little scary. But 46 years ago, yeah, a little scary. I hate to date myself. But 46 years ago, who would have thought, not this chick, that she would be getting such an honor? Amazing. Well, anyway, President Brown, members of the Board of Trustees, faculty and staff, friends and family, all the other wonderful honorees today, and most of all, the 6,532 members of the most distinguished class of 2017. Congratulations. But wow, look at you. You seem rested, relaxed, happy, actually sober. Could that be? I don't think I was back then. Anyway, seriously, I'm so honored to share this day with you, especially because I didn't actually make it to my own graduation. Actually, I almost didn't make it to BU at all. I was originally planning to go to NYU, which was just a quick subway ride from Queens, where I grew up. But my wise older brother said to me, if you go to school in New York, your mom will be at your dorm 3 times a week. All of a sudden, a 4-hour ride up I-95 to I-90 seemed like a really attractive proposition. Of course, once I escaped my folks, I realized not only how much I loved them, but how much I genuinely owed them for my success. So before we go any further, let's hear it for your parents. Come on. Your loved ones. And everyone who has helped you get here today. Now, I certainly learned a lot during my time at BU. It was a great school back then, but it's even greater now. So thanks for making my degree look a hell of a lot better now than it was then. And I'm a pretty proud alumna, really. So after grad school, I lucked into my first job in television. And it's been a really wonderful journey that's led me to my present home at NBCUniversal. Over the years, television has changed a lot, and those changes only seem to be accelerating. But there's one thing that will always remain constant. Whatever the genre, if it's scripted, unscripted, even news and sports, television at its core is a platform for telling stories. And for thousands of years, you go. And all kinds of stories. They entertained us and inspired us. They shocked and charmed us. They've brought us unforgettable characters, from Odysseus to Kim Kardashian. Now, for the record, had nothing to do with Odysseus, but Kim, I plead the fifth. So, you may not know it now, but whether you studied communications or engineering, law or medicine, business or classics, okay, you all are storytellers. But when you leave today, you'll begin to write the most powerful, most meaningful, and most entertaining in many ways, the story of your life. It's the story of you. Now, as you can imagine, I've heard a whole lot of story pitches in my career, some good, some not so good. And what I've learned is that the most compelling stories have 5 elements in common. First, The best stories have a strong lead character who undergoes some kind of transformation. That, my friends, is you. 2, they have a supporting cast of characters who help them achieve more than they can do alone. You'll meet them if you haven't yet. 3, they have conflict and adversity that the lead character must overcome. Trust me, that's coming. 4, they're also grounded in an interesting and exciting time and place. That's now. And finally, they help us understand something that was hidden or undiscovered before. Now, with these elements in mind, let's talk about the story of you. And of course, like any good television executive, a couple of notes that may help you along the way. So want to hear them? Okay. Well, you're captive anyway, so you're stuck. So here goes. So the best stories start with establishing character, not just likes and dislikes, strengths and weaknesses, but attitude, because attitude sets the tone for something else, something that is bigger than anything you're about to do. And I learned that on my very first job. I was working just down the street at a local PBS station called WGBH. I was a production assistant on a kids show called Infinity Factory. As a PA, everyone outranks you, everyone. You're often assigned to a cast member to help them do whatever they need, whether it's running lines, making copies, picking up coffee. As President Brown mentioned earlier, I was assigned to one of the most popular members of the show's cast, the sheepdog. Now, you know when people complain that their job is crap? My job was literally crap. Because instead of picking up coffee, that's what I had to pick up. But here's the thing, I would do it all over again. That job taught me how important it is to understand the needs of your coworkers, canine or otherwise. Thank you. Life dishes out plenty of crap, figuratively and sometimes literally. It's how you handle the crap that counts. Now, all characters need development, and your lead story does too. And nobody's going to help you more than some key supporting characters. After all, where would Batman be without Robin? Kirk without Spot? Serena without Venus? Ben without Jerry? Or for that matter, the other Ben without Matt? And maybe too early, but Trump without Putin? Oops. So, who are the supporting characters who will be central to your story? The catalyst for your very best conversations and your biggest transformations. You've already identified a few of them: your parents, your professors, your friends, those warm, caring, wise people we typically think of as mentors. For me, it was my father. But there's another type equally important, someone I call the challenging mentor. This is a person you think is your antagonist, but who ends up being your greatest ally. It's a person who pushes, criticizes, and challenges you to meet a standard of excellence you might not otherwise achieve. For Harry Potter, think Professor Snape. For Tom Brady, think Bill Belichick. I met my first challenging mentor right here at BU. His name was Harris Smith. He was a brilliant ex-Army sergeant who taught photography. And when I say taught, I mean he commanded the darkroom like boot camp. He would hold up a photograph and say, "Bonnie, this is an absolutely piece of junk. He literally kicked me out of class and would not let me return until I put in the effort to take a great shot. It wasn't fun. I was truly embarrassed in front of all my classmates, but I knew he was right, and I knew I could do much better. Throughout my career, I've had mentors who initially terrified me, but who ended up being the most nurturing at all. The most memorable was, and oddly still is, Barry Diller, a media giant, and my boss at USA and Sci-Fi many, many years ago. One Friday night, I got an email from him. Subject line, "Your decisions." Of course, I have to speak in his voice. Those two words sent shivers down my spine. Barry had a few questions about one of the shows on Sci-Fi called Crossing Over, which happened to feature a psychic. His question: if psychics are real, why was he on the science fiction channel? And if he wasn't real, why the hell were we in business with him at all? So that's right. If you think you're done with philosophy because you're wearing a cap and gown, think again. Barry's interrogation lasted the entire weekend. He wanted to understand just what I had decided and how, my facts, my logic, my entire thought process. He forced me to think outside my comfort zone and create a watertight argument that I had to own. By 11 p.m. Sunday, I had reached a final conclusion. It was, you can't prove that psychics are real. So a show with a psychic exists somewhere between fact and fiction. Perfect for the Sci-Fi Channel. Barry's final note simply said, "Okay, your arguments win." To this day, those are some of the best 4 words I've ever heard. I mean, sort of, kind of right up there with "here's a promotion," "will you marry me," and "free drinks at the dugout." All right. Okay, that's fine. I cheated a little bit. My point is, these supporting characters are vital. And when they push you, you might stumble, you may even fall down. But once you get up, and you will, you'll end up standing even taller. Now, even fairy tales don't go straight from once upon a time to happily ever after. There's got to be conflict. And in most conflicts, your voice is the most powerful tool you have. The thing is, before you use your voice, you have to learn how and when to use it. And that starts not speaking with arrogance, but listening with humility. Who is your audience? What do they want to know? What are they trying to tell you? And how can you get them to yes? I once worked on a show where I knew my voice would never be the loudest in the room. I also knew it would be a couple of octaves higher than anyone else's because the room was filled with pro wrestlers and world wrestling executives. I had been put in charge of the WWE, even though I knew nothing about wrestling. You can imagine how skeptical everyone was, including me. This was a recipe for hot tempers and high anxiety. My first task was to convince a room full of strangers to work with me, and ultimately to trust me. Strangers who had necks bigger than my waist. So my approach, I sat quietly and I listened. I didn't cower in the corner, and I didn't claim to have all the answers. What I did was figure out what they needed, what I had to offer. These guys knew wrestling, and they knew their audience. I knew how to develop characters and build stories. I knew how to make good TV. And that very first conversation, which was honest and authentic on both sides, became the basis for an amazing 20-year work relationship and a deep friendship, not to mention some fun wrestling along the way. So, find your voice, know when to use it, and just as important, when not to use it. So your attitude, your supporting cast, how you handle conflict, those are all choices your character makes. But there are two pieces of the story you don't get to choose, and that's time and place. 46 years ago, when I was sitting where you are, or I was actually supposed to be sitting where you are, everything felt uncertain and unsettled. We were fighting a deeply unpopular war in Vietnam. Student protesters at Kent State had been fired upon and 4 killed by the Ohio National Guard. 11 days later, 2 more were killed at Jackson State in Mississippi. Civil rights issues were front and center. Many of us looked for guidance from BU's very own Howard Zinn, a beloved professor and prominent anti-war and civil rights activist. Meanwhile, our technology and culture were changing rapidly. The modern environment movement was taking off. Women were rebelling against the patriarchy. And people on all sides of every issue were taking to the streets. We felt like we couldn't trust our leaders or authority in general. The future and our roles in it were open questions. Sound familiar? But when the stakes are the highest, that's when the world needs you the most. That's when your story goes from being about a character to being about character. Today, everywhere you look, people are retreating into bubbles, and those bubbles are hardening into shells. We're not willing to see, no less embrace difference. Now, in my family, difference is a given. I'm a Russian Jew from Queens. My husband's a WASP from Cleveland. My stepdaughter Kime is half Malaysian. Her grandparents are Indian Chinese. My son-in-law Ro was born in Calcutta. And my son Jesse's identity was informed by all of the above. Around our dinner table, difference is celebrated, but outside our home, that's not always the case. I remember the first time I faced anti-Semitism while studying in Kansas for a semester. I remember when Kime's elementary school classmate told her her skin was too dark. I remember being asked if my own stepdaughter was my son's nanny. But moments like these are the reasons it's so important that we listen to one another's stories and share our own. Many years ago at USA Network, we launched a campaign called Erase the Hate. It started as a series of documentaries highlighting stories of people from all walks of life. It became an award-winning initiative dedicated to acceptance and tolerance. Sadly, that mission is even more relevant today. In this moment of polarization, it's more important than ever that we pay attention to each other's stories, and that starts with you. I encourage you to take the time to figure out where other people are coming from, literally and figuratively. Learn about your own blind spots, acknowledge your own fears, listen to podcasts that make you angry, read things that make you uncomfortable, talk with, not at people with different points of view. When you step outside of your own bubble, you'll develop empathy for people with whom you disagree. You'll develop a strong sense of self and become a better advocate for what you believe. If I've learned anything in the years since I graduated, it's that the most improbable stories are the ones that capture your imagination, because they allow you to see things differently, and they teach you something about your own character. That's the reasons we started telling stories in the first place. They help us understand things we didn't before. Today, your story begins anew. You have everything you need to make it a great one: the talent, the education, the character, and the voice. Now, all you have to do is write it, tell it, and live it fully. Thank you, and congratulations, class of 27.